Hello house lovers. Well, I think I win the prize for the best social isolating mask of all time. This might be the last time I can come to Bonaccord for a couple of weeks because I imagine Melbourne is probably going to go into lockdown in the next few days. So I hope you're all okay out there in coronavirus land and being kind to yourself and to each other. But life must go on at the coalface of house renovation. And I thought today, why not? Let's talk about waste. Baby, let's talk about you and me. Such as how to dispose of old sinks. All right, the answer to your questions. Here we are in the former kitchen of the presidential suite, which as you can see is no more because I, with my brute strength, have removed everything, as you can see. Ta-da! Empty slate. I must confess, it was actually quite satisfying to, let me just straighten the camera, to remove all of that stuff. So, here are some essential moral/philosophical questions. When you're restoring, renovating, rebuilding a house, you're going to create a lot of waste. There's a lot of stuff coming out. And I think in this day and age, we have to really focus on that, I think, and minimize the amount of waste that we're creating, but particularly the amount of waste that we're wasting. Is that a tautology? Look it up. One of the things I was really clear about from the word go with this house was that whoever we were working with was going to have to work with me on the notion that we were going to try and reuse as much as possible from the site and dispose of what we couldn't in as responsible manner as we could. And so what that meant for me was making sure that everyone was on board with the notion that I was going to be in here getting rid of stuff. So what are some things to think about? The first obvious thing to think about is, can you reuse anything? Can you reuse old bricks? Can you reuse timber? Any fixtures and fittings, glass, etc., etc., etc. As you know, here in the Chappelle Corby Memorial Courtyard bathroom, I was able to save the mosaic tiles from the shower recess. And there are a few things in the house that I'm going to hopefully be able to repurpose or reuse, but not a lot. So that meant I had to come up with creative solutions to find better homes for the other things. Oh my God. Loo paper. I forgot that I brought all this loo paper into the house. And this is one of the little suites in the courtyard. It's actually made of asbestos, which we are looking forward to getting rid of. But look at all these tiles. It's a sort of a palimpsest 70s tiling, but these ones are actually really quite beautiful. And I'm kind of thinking I'm going to chisel off these tiles. They all look a bit loose, and see if we can't do something cunning with those. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a million kitchen sinks, as we did, it seems they're a very hot commodity on the second-hand market. Now, I chose not to try and sell any of these things, but to give them away. And actually what I discovered is it's very easy to remove these steel sink units. Now, if I'd left them for the builders, they would have just demolished everything and put it into a skip. But I feel there is a life for these. In the main part of the house, there are 10 rooms and there are 10 kitchenettes, or there were, because I have ripped them out with my bare hands. Each one had a sink, so I took each one out and I posted all of them on a social media platform and I gave them away for free. And in fact, in the end, one guy came and took all of them, which was great. So I got rid of the waste for free, and someone is going to find a better purpose for them other than landfill. All right, I feel we're doing a cooking show. So here was a stove. There were, I think, 10 or were there 12? Anyway, there was quite a lot of stoves. 4 of them were really old and perhaps a little dangerous. In the end, they were the ones that were not taken. And what I learned is that unfortunately, there is no money in scrap metal anymore, but I air-tasked some guys with a trailer who came and took them to a recycling yard who were happy to accept them, just not pay for them. Now, I was happy with that because essentially it was still cheaper to air-task someone to take them in their van to the recycling yard than it would have been to have got skips onto site, which would have been filled very quickly with quite large gas stoves. So economically, we were still ahead. And let's talk about metal. So there's quite a bit of metal in here, and again, that can go to recycling yards. You'll have to do it yourself because they generally won't come because there's no money in scrap metal. You can put it in your recycling bin, which for some of the smaller, squishier bits, that's what I did. So all the aluminium trim from the carpet in the main house, etc. There was metal trims for some of the curtain rods. All of that could go in the recycling bin. And back in the presidential suite, ensuite, you know that my greatest triumph was the shower basin that was here that turned out to be crimson enamel, and I felt highly desirable. And I was able to find someone who was happy to take it away for free. It took me, I have to confess, quite a bit of ingenuity and effort to get it out in one piece without chipping it, but I did it all for the sake of not creating any more waste. And I think that's the essence. You just got to be a bit creative. See what there is in the house that you think might have another purpose, take a bit of care taking it out, and then just post it either for free or for a small sum. And there are always people willing to take on old doors, old sinks, old shower basins, old window frames, really many things that are going to come out of your renovation. Even roof tiles, even old bricks, and even shower screen glass. Yes, I kid you not, I am convinced there is a market for old shower screen glass. Why? Because a friend of mine in Tasmania recently had a greenhouse made, and the guy who was building it said, you know, the best thing to use is reinforced glass, obviously, but that's quite expensive. But shower screen glass is reinforced, and it's the cheapest way to buy it. So what he did, he went to a hardware store and bought some shower screen kits and cut those up and used them to make a greenhouse. So I'm thinking, surely there's got to be a bit of a DIY market in used shower glass screens so people can make their own greenhouses. And come the coronavirus apocalypse, we are all going to be needing to grow fruit, veg, and herbs in our own backyard. Message me if you want my old shower screens. Now, I know this is hardly going to save us from the environmental apocalypse that is fast approaching. However, in the house, there are a couple of old textiles like this. These are the curtains that are still hanging in George's old room, and it's kind of a nice print. It's pure cotton. And I found a great visual artist in Melbourne who works largely with vintage textiles such as these that are found on site, not particularly precious or exciting, but that might have an emotional story, and she creates works out of them. And that seems like a great idea for the textiles in this house. So there is this one, and there is a piece of old Indian fabric that's hanging up in one of the little suites in the Chappelle Corby Memorial Courtyard. My other greatest triumph, as you know, was the poor 4 cypress trees that used to sit in the front garden. And the great news with those was that I was able to get the local council to do a green waste pickup to take them away. And they turn them into mulch, which, if you ask nicely, you can then get back. And getting your local council to deal with all your green waste, I think, is a really great solution. And you can return the love back to your soil. There we are, house lovers, back to where we started from, which is always a good position to be in. How to get rid of your waste 101. As you can see, I haven't yet removed that sink. I can't wait to rip it out with my bare hands and find someone who wants to put it to good purpose. And I suppose that is the moral of the story. Just try and think laterally about the things you're taking out of your renovation project and who might find a use for them. It might not be things that you would imagine there is a second life for, but think, try, have a look on all the social platforms where things are given away and swapped, and just see what people might be interested in. I think it's much better to try and find a home for a lot of the materiality you're taking out of the place than just putting it straight into landfill. You might have to think a little laterally to try and figure out who might be interested and where you might be able to advertise what you've got, but give it a good Aussie go, as they say in Australia. I found it really satisfying to find people who wanted to use some of the things that I was taking out of here, and I'm looking forwards to finding people who want the rest of it, including that sink and the lavatory that is just around the corner that I also think someone will have a better use for. Well, there we are. I think it is time for me to mask up and go back into the wild world of coronavirus. Maybe next week I won't be able to get out and about, so you'll have to come to our rental property and learn what are the key things you need in a rental while you're renovating. The other interesting fact is the good doctor, he of great fame, is a respiratory specialist. So any questions about the coronavirus, put them in the box below and we'll answer them. Pandemic Survival 101. But in the meantime, it is good night from me and it's good night from him.